Hey, this is ZSH Zoo Tours, and today we're in England at the Yorkshire Wildlife Park. This is one of the newest zoos in the UK. It opened in 2009, and ever since they rescued 13 lions from a dilapidated Romanian zoo in 2010, they have come on leaps and bounds and are now one of my favourite zoos in the UK. We're starting our tour at the Atlantic Forest, which contains 3 species and one of the most astonishing sights I've ever seen in a zoo. The first ones we come to are these cute little bush dogs. I've seen these in a few zoos in the UK, and they are always worth seeing, bouncing around. They're so cute. And next to them, Brazilian tapirs. These are probably the most commonly held tapirs, certainly in the UK anyway. This gives you a first glimpse at how enormous the habitats in this zoo are. But the main event for me was the maned wolf. I've never seen a maned wolf in a zoo before, so I was very pleased to see one when I arrived, but what I wasn't expecting was to see 7 of them all in the same habitat. The Yorkshire Wildlife Park has an entire family of maned wolves. Here they are, all living in this pretty sizable habitat. And pro tip, come at feeding time if you want to see all of them, because that is what's bringing them out here. They like to skulk around in the bushes and hide in the trees, but at feeding time you'll see all of them out at the same time. It's an amazing sight. Maned wolves are omnivores. In the wild they mainly eat vegetables, mainly the wolf apple, which is named because of their fondness for them, but they also eat meat, and today at the zoo they are having rabbit. Despite their excitement, they also seem to be really calm. I didn't see any squabbling for food or anything like that. This one's found a mouse, and they're just going to go off into the bushes at the back and eat that. And we will move on to one of the newest habitats here for the Californian sea lion. The sea lions here live in 2 enormous lakes, one of which holds 1.9 million litres of filtered water and is the largest purpose-built habitat of its kind in the world. This pool is for the males, you can see them here. Our visit coincides with breeding season for the sea lions, and having had 2 sea lion pups last year, the zoo doesn't want to breed them again this year to give the other pups a chance to acclimatise. So at this point the males are in this smaller lake, and then the females and the pups are in the enormous lake behind it. And here's one now. As she gallops down towards the water, we can see just how big this second pool is. It's absolutely massive. If I've got my zoo history correct, then these sea lions originally lived at Whipsnade, also in England. It's London Zoo's sister zoo, and they moved over here a few years ago. And I think the reason they moved is that Whipsnade was no longer happy with the size of the pool that they lived in. Pretty sure that these sea lions are going to be happy with the size of the pool they live in now. It's 70 metres long and 3 metres deep. Again, we're here at feeding time. Always the best thing to do when you get to the zoo. Check when the feeding times are for the animals that you want to see and make sure you are there at the right time, because you get a much closer experience with the animals. We've got some of the females and the pups playing around here. I always think it's amazing how different their fur looks when it's dry compared to when it's wet. This habitat is called Point Lobos. It's named after the marine reserve in California, and in English it means Point of the Sea Wolves, which is what Californian sea lions are also known as in Spanish because of the sound of their barks. This is one of 6 species of sea lions, probably the most commonly kept in zoos. This is probably my favourite sea lion habitat I've ever seen though. The amount of space they have, and the fact that they're not performing tricks or anything like that, you get to see some much more natural behaviour like this. It really is amazing. They do still hand feed them because that is how they were fed at Whipsnade, but aside from that, they don't have any tricks to perform or anything. They can just go about their lives. Meanwhile, we're going to see something very special now: baby cheetahs. Cheetah Territory is the latest exhibit at Yorkshire Wildlife Park. Despite the fact that I only had cheetahs for a year when we visited, they've already had babies, and they are probably the cutest thing I have ever seen in a zoo. Look at them climbing up the rocks here to get back to their mum. The dad is in another habitat next door, and then once the pups are grown, they'll probably be transported to another zoo that's breeding cheetahs, and dad will be able to move back in with mum again. I apologise for the quality of the footage of these little guys. They were a long way away, but I thought it was worth including just because they are so cute. And it's testament to how well Yorkshire Wildlife Park is looking after their animals, and to be honest, probably the enormous size of these habitats that they are already breeding here. I made 2 visits to the habitat, and later on in the day they were a lot closer to the fence, so we could get this view of them. And we also saw them off exploring their habitats. This might be one of the first times they've ever done this. If you listen carefully, you can hear the little squeaks he's making. It was just a few days after they emerged from the birthing nest that I made this visit, and they're already happily running around the habitat and exploring. Cheetah Territory leads us into the next area of Yorkshire Wildlife Park, Africa. They've got some fairly uncommon animals here, like these Gelada, along with eland and leshway, and some of the zoo staples like giraffe and zebra as well. Gelada are closely related to baboons. They're fascinating, and they are the last surviving species of grazing primates, i.e. they eat grass. And as we go further into Africa, we can see this big mixed savanna here, with eland, giraffe and zebra. And next to them, another treat, the incredibly rare eastern black rhino, and yet another baby. This one was born in January last year, so they now have 4 eastern black rhinos at Yorkshire Wildlife Park. This is the main giraffe yard, not the most attractive I've ever seen, it's basically just a square of grass. But we've got something much more exciting to see next, which is something the Yorkshire Wildlife Park has a long history with, by their standards anyway, the lions. Lion Country spans 7 acres and was originally opened to house 13 lions that the zoo rescued from terrible conditions in a zoo in Romania back in 2010. And they've done another rescue mission since then, and it's now home to lions which have been rescued from the war in Ukraine. As you can see, they've got loads of room, and they're pretty active today as well. Some of these lions have only been here since May 2024, and the story of how they got here is pretty incredible. An adult female was found heavily pregnant and abandoned in a private zoo in Donetsk just after the start of the Ukraine war. So she was rescued from there, moved to Kiev, gave birth to 3 cubs, was moved on again to a temporary home at Poznan Zoo in Poland, and then eventually moved into Yorkshire Wildlife Park, where this is intended to be their forever home. Now from Africa's largest predator to one of the smallest, meerkats. This is hands down my favourite meerkat habitat I've ever seen, because here not only do the large animals live in massive habitats, even the little ones do. It looks like a pretty standard meerkat habitat at first, until you realise there's actually 2 sizable habitats joined together with underground tunnels, and the meerkats have free roaming between all of them. There's really low walls and some glass viewing as well, so you can get really close to the meerkats. And because of the amount of space they can have loads of meerkats here. I spent so long at this habitat just watching these little guys do their thing. They're so playful, and all the different areas that they have to move around in means you get to see them doing loads of their natural behaviours. We've got sunbathing, cleaning, sentry duty, and just running around, climbing. They're pretty much ubiquitous in zoos these days, but when the habitat's this good, I'm not going to complain. Time to move on to the next area in the park now, the Himalayan Pass. This is home to red pandas, Chinese small-clawed otters, and binturong. Sadly, the otters and the binturong were a no-show today, but we got to check out one of the red panda experiences and get very close to these little guys, which was awesome. This is a paid experience. You don't normally get to get this close to the red pandas, but it's something I would highly recommend because, wow, just look at this. Red pandas are primarily nocturnal, so what the zoo does is it places food down. I think they only do 1 or possibly 2 of these experiences a day, and if the pandas want to come down for the food, they do, and if they don't, they don't, but we got lucky. This guy did. They have, I think, 4 of them here, 3 or 4. The others stayed up in the trees. This one, I think it's a female actually, came down to eat some of the food. This is like mushed up vegetable and nutrient pellets, and they get fresh bamboo as well, which you can actually see growing in the background behind the panda here. I can't think of many better ways to spend your time than being this close to a red panda. It's an amazing experience. After the Himalayan Pass, it's Leopard Heights, which is home to the most endangered big cat in the world, the Amur Leopard. It's apparently the largest facility of its kind in Europe, and they are breeding Amur Leopards here. They are notoriously shy, but I did manage to get a shot of the leopard, grabbing some food and taking it away. There's only around 75 of these left in the wild, and zoos all over Europe are currently engaged in breeding programs to try and save them. I really hope they succeed, because these cats are absolutely gorgeous. We'll move on now to an area with much more common animals, but still a lot of fun, Wallaby Walkabout. As the name suggests, this is a walkthrough exhibit. There's a lot of wallabies here, and it is a lot of fun to walk through. There's 2 species, the red-necked wallaby, which is a staple of zoos all over the world really, and the rarer swamp wallaby. You can tell the difference between the 2 because the swamp wallabies have a darker coat. This is only the 2nd zoo that I've seen swamp wallabies in, but I'm a big fan of any wallaby really, especially when you can get as close to them as this. And there's another walkthrough next door, Lemur Woods. They've got 3 species of lemur here, including 2 that you don't often see, the ubiquitous ring-tailed lemurs, and then crowned lemurs and red-bellied lemurs as well. As you can see, the habitat is much, much bigger than your normal walkthrough, which is part of the course of Yorkshire Wildlife Park, which is great for lemurs, not so great if you're trying to film at all. So I only saw the crowned lemurs today, although I'm not sure I've ever seen them anywhere else, so it's still a privilege to see them. And from here we head on into the Woodland Walk, which is an area with a few different habitats, mainly for animals that don't really fit any of the main themed areas in the park. This habitat is for Hamadryas baboons, there's one. Next to that is a habitat for African hunting dogs. And then finally, there's a really nice woodland habitat for Visayan Warty pigs. And after the Woodland Trail is probably my favourite area in Yorkshire Wildlife Park, which is a South American area full of amazing animals called Amazonas. The first thing we see is one of my favourite animals on the whole planet, the giant otter. These guys are so charismatic. I haven't seen them in many zoos and never seen them in a habitat this size. And when you have them in a habitat of this size, and when you have as many as they do at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, you can really see their natural behaviours. They're so charismatic. This one is off to join his friends to display the first of the behaviours, lazing around in a big pile. And then using their communal toilet, much to the amusement of my fellow zoo-goers, but I'll spare you the details of that. If you listen carefully, you can hear their reaction. And then it's off for behaviour number 3, swimming. There's a giant lake in their habitat and they have all sorts of things to do here, like chasing pigeons, playing with an enrichment ball, and just generally swimming and frolicking in the lake. As the name would suggest, the giant otter is the largest species of otter. They can reach up to 1.6 meters when fully grown, and they've been known to fend off animals as large as black caiman to protect their young, and they've also been observed in the wild hunting anaconda, although there's not much chance of seeing them do that here. They really are amazing creatures, and every time I come to Yorkshire Wildlife Park, they've had another set of babies here. Their breeding success with this animal is absolutely amazing, and it just goes to show the success you can have when you give animals as much room as this. As well as the huge lake that you can see here, they also have a little indoor house. They're on their way there now, so we'll take a quick look at that. Here we go. This is a climate-controlled room. I've seen them teaching the babies how to swim in here on a previous visit, but let's move on. This is a cute little habitat for a cute little animal, the cotton-top tamarin. These are one of 3 species of tamarin that live in the Amazon, in Colombia. They live in the trees feeding on fruits and small insects. These guys are adorable, and they're yet another animal that they've successfully bred here at the zoo. I love how this habitat works. On the right, you've got this little roundhouse where they sleep, and to keep them safe from the cold on colder days. And then there's these ropes suspended from there all the way across the habitat, so they never need to touch the ground. And those ropes are connected to the big tree that you saw a minute ago, and they can get right up in there. We'll take a look at that in a second. And then scamper around all the branches of this big tree. It's really cool watching them scampering around the branches of an actual big tree rather than the smaller fake trees that you often get in zoos. And there's lots more trees in the next habitat, which is another walkthrough. It features 6 South American species: capybara, golden lion tamarins, silvery marmosets, red titty monkeys, agouti, and mara. Let's go and take a look at a few of them now. This is the brilliantly named red titty monkey, climbing around in one of these trees. The area is full of small trees and natural landscaping, and a lake for the capybara as well, so you can just walk around and see the animals in a fairly natural habitat, and especially on a nice day like this, which we don't get too many of in Yorkshire. It's really fun to walk around. These are the silvery marmosets. I've never seen these in a zoo before, and that's something I've seen in lots of zoos, but it's always a pleasure. The golden lion tamarin, they're so beautiful. I love how close you can get to the animals in this habitat. They've got multiple routes between all the trees there, so there's no need for them to ever come down to the ground, and they seem perfectly happy up there with people walking around below them. This one's off to explore another part of the habitat. And then at the end of the walkthrough is a lake where the capybara live, although obviously they can go wherever they like, but they tend to stick around in here. The whole area has been re-landscaped recently. I think they've done a really good job. Now we're going to go and see the final part of Yorkshire Wildlife Park, Project Polar. The polar bear habitats are absolutely huge. You can see just how big they are from up here, and they have 6 polar bears living here at the moment. And if you want to keep 6 of the largest land carnivores on the planet, then you need a lot of space. So these habitats cover a total of 10 acres. Back down on the ground, this is the entrance to Project Polar, the largest collection of polar bears in England. And here's the first habitat. It's really nicely landscaped. You can see one of the bears in his little cave there. Each habitat has huge water sources and then lots of land as well. They really are absolutely massive. The park described it as one of the world's leading centres for polar bear welfare and conservation, and having been there a few times, I can well believe it. The largest lake here contains over 25.5 million gallons of water, and it's 8 metres deep. And it really is the perfect setting, other than the wild itself, for keeping these bears. Yorkshire Wildlife Park is part of numerous different conservation groups and the captive breeding programme to try and save this species. They do a lot of work with other zoos recommending the best ways to look after them. And with the trouble that polar bears are having in the wild at the moment, centres like this are really important. And there you go, that's Yorkshire Wildlife Park. I'll leave you with some footage of the polar bears frolicking around in the water that I took on a previous trip. Thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you again soon for another zoo tour. Bye.